Is it actually going to focus? Well, it's more in focus than it was when I had it in food mode. It'll have to do. A flurf known as Mr Lie Connive posted a video. I've just seen GeoStreber and Slice Arcane going over it and laughing at it. It was very, very stupid. What do you expect from a flurf? And one of the things in it was one of these diagrams of how an eclipse happens, with some really strange labels and some really strange places. So, here's a diagram of how an eclipse happens. And I've got 3 examples way over here on the right, with these moons at very different distances from these planets, but you get the same effect. So I put another moon way up here, and you have these 2 triangular areas on the diagram. From up here, I should probably use a pointier tool, from around about here, widening out to this moon, there, and on the other side the same shape tapering down to a point there. And he started putting labels in here, which is just ridiculous, but what do you expect from a flurf? They are ridiculous. But he also made the most bizarre assertion about this triangular space back here, which I haven't drawn in because, yeah, scale issues. You try lining these things up. I can't do it any bigger scale than this because, you know, I only have 16 gigabytes of RAM, you know, what do you expect me to do? Anyway, let's have another diagram. Slightly bigger planet there, and a slightly bigger moon at similar distances. From a same-sized sun. And this is the tinier diagram that you might see in a textbook, where you have just the light from the edges of the visible part of the sun in the directions that just skim the edges of the visible edges of the sunlit, pretty much the same thing, parts of the moon, and their paths to a planet here. The question is what you see at this point marked with the red arrow. And from there all the way back to here is the full shadow, Umbra. And on this side there is a similar space, which isn't anything in particular, it just happens to be between the moon and the sun. It's just there. He started pointing at it and adding labels and stuff. Very bizarre. But any fool can tell you that if you're here, you can't see the sun that's way off there to the left. And any honest fool could tell you that if you're here, you can see part of the sun that way, but not the parts of it that are blocked by the moon that way. Likewise here, but the other way up. Part where Mr Lie Connive started talking really hilariously stupid shit was when he was talking about this bit here. I should have brought a bicycle bell so I could go... And that didn't work, did it? Go ding every time I mention him, because he's an idiot. Ding! He said the Umbra should reappear here, because you have, behind the moon, you have this line coming this way, and this line coming this way, and here in between them is Umbra. Well, over here is a space in between those 2 lines. And he said that means that according to NASA, physicists, scientists, astronomers, mathematicians, astrophysicists, rocket engineers, ESA, JAXA, pretty much everybody on Earth, really, there should be solid full Umbra in there, in that space between the lines. He is wrong. This diagram doesn't make it very obvious that he's wrong, Common sense does that, but it's obviously not as common as we might like. So, let me add some extra lines to this diagram from some extra points on this sun at 30 and 60 degrees and from the centre. All of them coming here and crossing over on the moon and carrying on this way. Does this make it any more clear? Well, you now have these lines from other parts of the sun shining into these spaces where you get penumbra. And you still have this full umbra in the space in between those two spaces. Unfortunately, trying to get those lines lined up with the edge of the little moon there, well, that's as much image as I can have on the screen at a time, so this is as far as those lines got. They don't reach that. It's going to have to get even worse. Oh, yes. Just to make it clear that that space where there weren't any lines, it ain't dark. This is lines going off in all directions from multiple points of the sun, including round the far side where it's got nothing to do with this eclipse whatsoever. It's just shining out into space. All chosen points have lines of light going off in all directions, except through the sun, because there's stuff there and it gets in the way. And I've even added a couple of extra positions on the surface, just there and there for a couple of them, and way up there, and so on. And I have drawn those lines not just past the moon, but as you might be able to tell from the middle of this part of it, to the surface of the moon. So what was an empty space here, where Mr Lie Connive was adding labels, like inventing his own weird phenomena, now there's light there. That side of the moon is lit. But the same problem applies, that you can draw lines all the way out here if you want to, but it's kind of difficult to get the exact line up right beyond that far. Do I need more lines? Yeah, I need more lines, but only the lines that are relevant. What I've done here is shorten the scale even more. Squeezed it down left to right to get the moon on the same screen as the sun, which gives you this much, much shorter full umbra beyond the moon here. And I've drawn pretty red lines from just 4 places on the sun's surface. This got tedious. I don't want to give myself RSI drawing red lines, do I? Way out here. I haven't bothered drawing in a planet. But from this you can see all of this is fully sunlit. Everything up here is fully sunlit. Everything down here is. There's your umbra. This space. Here and here are the penumbra. This bit behind it is what he was talking about, where he was saying that the actual scientific model predicts there should be more umbra, and there isn't. Well, he says there isn't. Of course there isn't. Nobody's predicting anything like that. Don't think of it as penumbra. Think of it as partially sunlit. All these lines are lines from a particular point on the sun. All of these lines ending here are lines from a particular point on the sun. Lines ending there coming from a particular point on the sun. One of these 4. I've drawn fans of lines from there, stopped some of them on the moon, and continued the rest back here. If you're here, you are fully sunlit, because light from any part of the near side of the sun can hit you. If you're here, you are not sunlit at all, because no direct line of light from any part of the sun can hit you. If you are here, you are partially sunlit. You are lit by this fan of light, and if I drew another fan of light from there, and another from there, and another from there, and another from there, you'd be lit by all of them, anywhere here. But you're not lit by this one, because it's blocked by the moon. So don't think of this as partial shadow, think of it as partially sunlit. And this space here, same thing applies. If you're there, you're lit by this much of the sun, but not by this part. So you are partially sunlit. And in this space behind it, where Mr Lie Connive was saying that we sensible people predict there should be more full umbra, no. You are partially sunlit because you are lit by all of this light coming from here, and you're partially sunlit because you're lit by all of this light coming from up here. You're not fully sunlit back here because the moon is blocking this part of the sun, but you are lit by that part and that part. Like that. What you get isn't more umbra, it's an antumbra. You have the penumbra, partial shadow, partially sunlit, both sides, in this wide cone that is getting wider and wider, and the bigger your light source is relative to the thing casting the shadow, and the closer to it you are, the broader that cone of penumbra will be, which is something he completely omitted in his Io and Jupiter bollocks. You have the umbra, which we all know about, tapering down. And again, the bigger the light source is relative to the object casting the shadow, and the closer to the light source the object is, the shorter and blunter a cone that will be. But here, behind the umbra, isn't more umbra, it is antumbra. It is the overlap of penumbra where partially sunlit and partially sunlit overlap. And you get partially sunlit from both sides of the moon at once. If the Earth is all the way up here, like it says, not to scale. If the Earth is all the way up here, and you're in this spot, you see total solar eclipse. The moon completely blocks the sun. If the Earth is somewhere back here, and you're somewhere along its surface here, what you see is an annular solar eclipse. Image search for antumbra. Diagram showing exactly that. It is a thing technically known as an annular solar eclipse. Ain't they pretty? Any further questions?